that? And he goes, I fully believe in myself. And I said, one of the things you do in your sales calls is you say, yes, I can help you with that. Now, and I said to him, that is redundant.
This is the Fearless Pricing Podcast, where we meet and talk about real-life pricing experience. I'm your host, Filip Fucic.
Hello and welcome back to the Fearless Pricing Podcast. Today, we have a special guest, a professional in making offers, an offer coach, Cristina Castro. Hi.
Hi. Thank you for having me today. Oh, yes, professional. Like we were just saying earlier, professional means lots of mistakes happen to become a professional, right?
Yes,
Made more
absolutely.
mistakes than the most,
Absolutely.
and therefore I worked out what to do now and not to make sharing these stories, right? So, yeah, Cristina
Exactly.
Castro. I'm part of a duo with Angela Tsai. We run a company called Grow Your Brand with Impact. And yes, we are offer coaches. Started initially as marketing and branding agency. Used to do a lot of different things and have narrowed it down that getting offers right means getting our campaign working, getting sales through the door, being clear on what we are doing and how we're doing and how we're serving the people we want to serve. So we had started a new offering, and this was in 2020. So, right mid pandemic, we're all working from home, we're all making a few changes. And it might have been 2020, 2021. So, right towards the cusp of 2021. And we were negotiating internally what the price was for this particular new offer. Now, we had started it quite low. I think we normally recommend, and I think a lot of people tend to do this, they start betas at a lower price, right? When you're still trying to work out what's included, what's the value, all of those things. And we had done a few betas and they'd gone really well. And we had decided to go to an international market. We are based in London, predominantly look after the UK market, just geographical reasons and time zones and all of those things. And I think, London businesses attract a UK market. And but we wanted to be as international as possible. So we decided to put all of our pricing in US dollars. So we went about and we set a pricing of 8,000 US dollars to the market. And I was talking to a potential client who was a very skeptical client. Is actually one of the most skeptical clients I've ever had. Just didn't believe marketing worked, but had been in business for a long time. And when he finally said, okay, but what's the price? I said 8,000. And I didn't actually specify US dollars or pounds. And he's like, oh, and I know now the trick is when you say the price, you then shut up and then you let them talk and you hear what they have to say, right? So I did that. I shut up
Exactly.
and I let them say. And in my mind, everything was normal. I was just giving him the price. I actually didn't think he was going to take it. And then he goes, okay, it's really expensive. It's more than I've ever spent in marketing, but all right, let's do it. £8,000. And my jaw just dropped. But at the same time, I was like, keep it together, keep it together. Like, this person has just said yes, you just need to roll with it. So I was like, okay, yep. So we'll get paperwork started. I'll send you the invoice. If you've got any questions, blah, blah, blah. I went through the spiel, trying my best to keep the most poker face I could possibly do on a Zoom meeting. And got off the phone or got off the call, called my business partner, and I said, I've just done the biggest mistake ever with pricing. And she's like, what do you mean? What's happened? I said, I didn't specify the currency, and the person automatically assumed I was talking in pounds. So I've actually sold our product at £8,000, which at the time, we've done that calculation just now, is about 30% more we were charging anyone else.
And that was your higher price, right? You went low and you went, oh, okay, let's do it at $8,000. And then you sold it 8,000
Exactly.
pounds.
Up
Yeah.
until then, we'd been selling it at about 5,000, 6,000 US dollars. So, this was a real hike up in price for us. And it kind of cemented that the value was there. The convincing was, it was all of that pricing was really our own blockage, our own mentality thinking we cannot charge those kind of prices.
And once you charge it successfully, yes, then now when another client comes and they say, "Oh, is that dollars?" No, it's
Yeah,
pounds.
exactly. Yeah. What if it's the highest in that point in time?
When I work with somebody, this is why I work up until they can sell at the higher price. Because once they do, it's, as you said, cemented. So if um, otherwise you're vulnerable to a skeptical client saying, who's gonna pay that price, that kind of price? And if you can say the last guy did, then they're like, okay, no more
Yeah,
questions.
exactly. And that's the funny thing. This person, this client of ours, was our most skeptical when it came to marketing, and also was the one that really transformed our pricing and our own belief in the value in ourselves.
So uh, you price him correctly despite yourself.
Exactly.
Oh, it happened to me a couple of times, and I think the most iconic one was in Singapore actually. Um, when I said the price, which at the time was much lower than it is today, and he knew that this was about 8 sessions, and he said, "Oh, right, per session." My face said no. I meant the whole thing, and his face said then goodbye. Because so no, I totally lost that one. Because his point was, look, if this is per session, it's kind of pricey, but fine. But if it's for the whole thing, it's suspiciously
Yeah.
cheap.
And it makes a big difference, right? I think it's being able
Yes.
to keep that poker face is one, right? But two, I mean, I think if I hadn't already been in that headspace of, I think we should be charging more with my business partner, it might have been a harder thing to pull off. But it is people, if you value yourself, people value you more as well, right? They see this as
Yes.
a luxury or an expensive good that is worth investing in.
I have a theory. It's about confidence because nobody really likes to pay for opinions, right? What do I get? An opinion, right? Oh, good. Um, but they're fine with doing that if their own confidence is below the level of the problem that they perceive. So if my back hurts a little bit, okay, I'll just exercise more or whatever. No, I won't, but I can
Yeah.
handle this. I don't need a massage therapist. I don't need a doctor. I'll handle this. So my confidence level is above my perception of the problem. The problem might be difficult, but I don't perceive it as such yet. And then just one morning, I can't get up from my bed. It hurts me so bad. So this didn't happen to me, but happened to a friend, right? Um, and he has a job where he has to stand up a lot. So he was ignoring it and shoving it, at the back of his mind and powering through. And then just one day he couldn't. And now, at this point, he wanted some expertise, some expert, not any expert, and definitely not a cheap one. He wanted the best, the most expensive one that he could afford at this moment, as soon as possible, right
Yeah.
now. And what does competence have to do with price? Well, we can't really tell for expertise. We can't really tell if somebody's good or not. If I had to translate something into Korean, I can't really check if that's Google Translate or a masterpiece of a translation. I can't read it. So if I really needed something translated right now, I would probably look at translators' prices and conclude, well, if they have the confidence to charge this much, to price this way, then probably there's a reason
Mm.
behind this, right? And this is how confidence in pricing translates directly into the perception of confidence in your work and then confidence in what you're doing, right? So I think that's about it. This is why people respect you more because they think that there's a reason for
Yeah.
this.
And I think it's also, like you said, it has to be said with conviction, right? I often say to a lot of clients, say it in the mirror a few times and then tell a few people and then tell a client. Because if you say it half wobbly, like your example, your poker face didn't play through, then it all
Hmm.
falls apart. So there needs to be a somewhat of a, I'm okay with this price. I'm okay enough to at least say it out loud in front of a client. And then hope for the best first time round. And then the second time round, like you said, it is so much easier because you go, who paid for it? Well, the last couple of guys paid for it.
Yes. Before we continue, I'd like to suggest two things. Firstly, if this is the first time you're tuning in, I'd love for you to subscribe and hear the next story in a week. And second, if you feel you could do with a little more fearless pricing content, look in the show notes for the link to the popular, short, and sometimes funny biweekly newsletter. That's it. Let's get back to the show. When you're pricing on value, and this is the only correct way for expertise, usually you price on what is spent, but the most things that are spent in talking to an expert are in the past, the year and the mistakes that they paid for, right? And with their time, but also with their soul and their ego, and um, that's what what is being spent here. Nothing is really spent. So I've seen so many cases where an expert has um, saved the client a lot of money or grief or time, just with like a 40-minute consultation. And then, although they saved them, I don't know, 20,000 of, I don't know, legal fees or something like that. And then they want to charge for $400 for it. And the client says, but we only just talk for half an hour because so not much was spent, right? It's not about
No.
spending. Do you have any poker face hints for
All
our
right.
listener?
I have to say, for me, it was remain quiet because the moment I opened up my mouth, I know it would slip, right? So I don't have a very good poker face. Like I will admit, like most of my facial expressions, whatever I'm thinking, it just translates, and I'm really hard at hiding my poker face. However, I know that if I keep quiet, I'm in a better position. Might not be 100% perfect, but a better position. So it, it's remembering that even if you keep a poker face, the other person is thinking, right? They're going through their own mind of, especially when you're giving someone like a price, they're going, can I afford it? Is it worth it? There's all of these questions happening in the other person's mind when you're having this conversation. You've just gone, "Vroom, here is my price." And the other person is going, well, where am I going to get that money from? Well, what have I spent on it before? Is it worth it? Do I think, am I going to get return? Am I not? So they're going through all of these questions appearing in their mind while you are just anxiously waiting for an answer, right? So that's what's happening in the dynamics. For me, I think the only thing that I could say in the poker face is that staying quiet. And I've learned this from traveling overseas. When I was 21, I went to Brazil and I don't speak Portuguese, but I didn't at the time. And I wanted to work out what the Brazilians were really like. And I knew I could understand enough by speaking Spanish and listen to what they were saying in context and everything else. That I knew the moment I opened my mouth, they'd be like, here is a tourist. What is she doing in the wrong areas in Rio de Janeiro, which is one of the most, dangerous cities at the time. And I just knew if I kept my mouth shut, I would be able to survive most times. You can nod, you can use your face without opening up your mouth. And so I think I've done that. I've learned to just go, mouth doesn't move, keep it shut, bite your tongue as much as you possibly can, literally and mentally, and then just go with the flow. And I think that's what my only tip is keep quiet. Know that there is two conversations happening: the one that's physically happening and the one that's going on in someone's head, and just let that conversation happen.
I like that. Thank you. So my good friend Paul Ashley Jensen would say people will pay you more if you use less words. So the less words you use, the more money you get, because w- when something is cheap or at least suspiciously affordable, then you expect the seller to say a million words and to compliment you and to say how good that a fit for you is, and say, and my cousin bought it, and that they were really happy, and then so you expect a flood of words, right? While on the other spectrum, when you receive something that is invaluable, that is really, really right, those can be just a few words s- spoken with great measure. So um, every word has weight, has gravitas, right?
Absolutely,
So
absolutely. And you and I are part of a community outside of this that one of our guys mentioned last week that he was being told he doesn't sound confident. Now, he's one of the most confident people I know in his field. He knows so much, he's done so much, he's achieved so much. He's paid off his mortgages, his kids' schools. Like, he's in a position where a lot of us would like to be once we are close to retirement. That money's not the problem. I just want to give my expertise away. And he said, what's one of the reasons why you think I don't come across as an expert? Like, why do you think people say to me, if you believe in it? And he goes, I fully believe in myself. And I said, one of the things you do in your sales calls is you say, yes, I can help you with that. Now, and I said to him, that is redundant. Why? Because are you
mhm.
trying to convince yourself that you can help that person with that, or are you trying to convince that person you can help them with that? If you just don't say it at all, it's already medically assumed.
Some things are stronger when not when left unsaid, right? The classic example being from Game of Thrones, as Tywin Lannister said, "A man who is king never has to say I am
Yeah.
king. You either are or you're not." Right? So if you have to say it, then you know there's something wrong with that.
Right?
It's I think that's the reason why people balk at calling themselves an expert, especially in the
Yeah.
UK, especially in the UK. So that culture is so it's a bit less so in Australia and Canada, and not at all in the US. No, no, it's just a different culture. But I've seen that in people from the UK. That they're especially, it's kind of cringy to say I am an expert in this. So other people can say that, and I will not correct them. But you can go too far with this. But yes,
That's okay.
yes. Um, some things are more powerful when left unsaid, and I think it's very interesting then to see um, what the reasons to believe are. I think that's what they're called. So let's say that um, let's say I had a client who was really empathetic towards his buyers. But if he said that, I just care so much about every buyer. Dude. I mean, any prison that you go to, anyone you ask, I mean, they're innocent, right? Everybody else is here for a reason, but they're innocent. Right? It's very cheap to say that. And reasons to believe are the things that you obviously sacrifice. This guy, in particular, he is selling specialty mortars, whatever. Um, and he has a specialty
Mm.
shop, and his crews implement that. So they take the material that the buyer buys, and they have to, and it's very time sensitive, and this and that, and so this is mostly villas. This is high
Mm.
end stuff, and all of his crews know that there's a 70% chance that he shows up in the middle of the process. Wherever this is, no matter how far, he will probably drive. So they are on their toes the whole time. And he used to, before working with me, he never said that to anybody. He just did that. But you don't have to say, I care very much. So he's not the youngest guy, and he has a successful business. You wouldn't expect him to be on the road checking sites, but he is, and that's like the most of his time he's in his car talking on his phone, driving to work. So if he just uses that and says, I check every site, or I check 70% of the sites, I'm on the road, I do 2,000 kilometers, a month, which he does, checking sites, then he doesn't have to say I
Yep.
care, right? Because this is the show not tell kind of a thing, right? And yes, I think that's then you can leave things unsaid directly, but let the audience come to their own conclusions. Let the client come to their own conclusions,
And we've
right?
all seen it, right? Like a
Um,
mother just has to look at a child and not say a thing, and the child knows they're in trouble, right? We've all experienced it. If looks
yes,
could kill, they say, right? So it's that action, right? Versus what you were saying, that the use of words and
yes, I think we put too much weight on words, and especially the quantity of
agree,
them.
agree.
Um, I also had this. I also had this case a long time ago. Um, I had this very high end dentist as a client, and they usually took like 3 hours of just to say, how much money they invested in this and that and the equipment and the people and who they work with. And we said that into two sentences. The first one, by that time, Croatia had 6 prime ministers. Out of these six, four were clients of his while in office. And also, and this was Corona times, still more than 50 supermodels from Milan, Italy, came to Zagreb, Croatia to be his patients every year. Now, do you really need to know anything else about that
Yeah.
dentist? Not
It's
really.
like in the UK
So,
saying the Queen is my client, and that's all you need is
s-
oh, well,
yes. So that's the only thing that you need to know. Everything else is completely implied. Hours upon hours of explanations are completely implied because what the message is here is people have who depend on their smiles, have all of the time and the money in the world for their smiles, come to him. That's it. So if you're looking for a high end, you're not going to get any higher, at least not in the vicinity. Otherwise, these people would go there. So that's the implied message, right? Um, it's funny you mentioned the skeptical client that says marketing is not working. Firstly, what you do would not be called marketing by many people. They would be wrong, but still, you're not. Oh, so you're not doing Facebook ads, SEO? No, okay. Um, and secondly, I think it's the disalignment that's a problematic. So if marketing was fishing, what people usually do is they get an expensive boat for catching sardines and expensive bait for catching tuna and an expensive net for catching I don't know hammerhead sharks or something, and a really good whaling instructor, and then they say, this fishing doesn't work. I've spent all this money for all of these wonderful tools that everybody says are great, but nothing
yep.
works.
Especially if they're fishing in the
Yes.
in a river.
Yes. 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 I mean, so I know it's not the sea, but it's a big lake. It's basically the same, right? I don't know, Lake Michigan or something like that. No, no, absolutely not. And this is why when I mention cases, I tend to mention European cases to Europeans and American cases to Americans and Australians. So because it kind of translates badly sometimes because some things work there that don't work here and vice versa. And then people relate to the situations more if they know that this is within their
Yep.
context, right?
100% agree. And we've spoken about that. Cultural ways of dealing with things are very different in Asia than they are in Europe, than they're in the US or even Australia. So you could probably hear the Australian accent in mine, even though I am based in London. But, it is a very egalitarian culture in Australia. And so if you pretend to be more than someone else, they're just not going to react the same way. But in the UK, you want to showcase that eliteness. You want to showcase that I've been there and I've stepped on the, I'm part of the Soho Club or whatever it might be. So it is a very, you're right. It's very, culture does come into play a lot when it comes to showcasing your expertise.
So what's the biggest challenge for you for being international?
Time zones is definitely probably one of the biggest, and making sure we'd run a 15-hour work week. So we made the decision a year and a half ago when Ange had her child to work
Mhm.
a business that worked for our lifestyle. And so being able to serve people within that 15 hours of our time, that of our chosen time, makes it does did make it difficult. The other thing is, I think what would have been difficult, but we've overcome, is by choosing the right people to work with. So we choose people based on their values, on what they want to achieve, versus potentially some other items. So, as part of what we do, there is a little bit of sales training, or at least sales enablement, in many ways to get things started,
Yeah.
especially with beta products or beta packages. And, and as once you've done that beta, then you can come through and work with someone like yourself and it'll elevate those things even further. But being
Yes.
able to talk to your market and being able to understand your market does come into play. I think the other one is we really get integrated. And sometimes if they are doing a conversation, and for us that those conversations are so crucial to understanding how to correctly package an offer, is listening to, like you said, those verbal and non-verbal cues that are being given to you in a conversation, and understanding when someone has a hesitation and how their voice changes, or when someone is very excited and their voice again changes altogether. And if we're listening to those conversations, being able to hear those obviously in a language we don't speak is very difficult. We can probably see that intonation change, but it's not always as translatable when you're working international audience. So, and as you well know, we've got some clients that are based in Germany or Sweden or in Hong Kong, and being able to do those in other languages often is a limitation for us in that piece. So, English opens a lot of doors, but not all doors.
Yeah. The last thing that I wanted to ask you about is the beta
Yes.
offers, right? Um, so what's the best practice that you advise on beta offers? Because in my experience, people take it for too long. So they have a beta price for 2 years or something
Yeah.
like that, right? It's kind of hard. It's kind of hard to step up. So it's easy to say, okay, now I'm at the beginning, but how do you know when you're not at the beginning anymore? So yeah, I'm revising my question. What would be the best practice for going from beta price to regular
Yeah.
price? That's the question.
So I believe a beta is a testing tube. It's a testing ground, and you want to have as many as you need, but at the same time have a limit on them. Um, and moving from beta to alpha, let's call it, um, it doesn't have to be permanent. So an alpha can also be a beta for the next alpha, right? So what I tend to
Yes.
say is start off and do 1, 2, 3 and evaluate. And I think that's probably the most important is we are always saying evaluate after every X amount of numbers. And that depending on the type of clients or depending on how you want to do it, if it's one-on-one versus a group scenario, how many are you going to do? One client is enough to change from beta to alpha. One client is enough. If that client is seeing the value and you are extracting that value from that client and it really getting to understand. So I think what's an important thing to implement when doing betas is check-ins, testimonials, and feedback. Now we have hired and we constantly will hire an expert separate from us to do those kind of extractions. So we have Bella, who is our client success manager, and she does an onboarding, a midway point check, and an external and an offboarding or a finalization check. And that is in order for us to ensure the person that we're working with sees the value that we have put into their time and their customer journey, but also for us to understand where are we going wrong. And someone can give quite clearly feedback to the person that hasn't delivered them. It takes away that personal implication of, I want to tell you that this was wrong or this was not great.
the sting
Exactly right.
takes out.
But it
the pain.
also gives you the chance to really elevate that value and really dig in and go, tell me how good I am. People don't want to ask that question, tell me how good I am, right? But a third person can say, how good was it to work with Christina and Angela? What did you value the most? And so one thing I would say is, yep, implement something like that, those check-in points. If you can have a third person do that, even better. Those pieces are going to give you your chance to go, yep, I can now see where my testimonials are, what the value I brought to that particular client is, and how do I continue to improve my program to move from beta to alpha to whatever it is. I mean, with Omicron, we know with COVID, we know now so many Greek letters. It is about that testing and that constant improvement and change. And I believe with that is an evaluation of your price at every point in time as well.
I think Delta would be the
Delta.
next one. Thank you. Yeah. So it can be beta can be one client if it's a great fit client.
Absolutely.
And thank you for the tip for the outside person. I think that's good. Right. Christina, where can people find you?
Well, they can mostly find us on LinkedIn. I think that's probably where we're the most active. We do have Instagram and our website, but LinkedIn is somewhere you'll always tend to find Ange and I playing in. It's just a field we feel the most comfortable with from our corporate days to now. So LinkedIn is definitely a place to find us. So you're looking for either Cristina Castro, and you'll see me with a London background on a picture at the moment, or Angela Tsai, Tsai, yellow. She's sitting on a yellow cushion, a yellow beanbag there. But Grow Your Brand with Impact is also where you'll be able to find us quite easily on our webpage, and we'll have links there to our social medias.
I'll put the links for both of you in the show notes. Thank you very much for sharing the story and sharing the insights. And thank you for joining us as well. And see you next time on What I Should Have Charged. Bye.
Right.
Thanks for listening. If you would like to hear more, simply subscribe. Until next time, your host, Filip Vojic.